Okay, this is our final section of Learning Unit Two's presentations, and we are talking about the Northern Renaissance now, so moving away from Italy. And, usually we do think of Italy as the center and as entirely the Renaissance, capital. But like I said, in Northern Europe, there's a trading town, trading place of Flanders, which is present-day Belgium, and they were having a renaissance as well. So they were also interested very much in the natural world and recreating the illusion of reality in the paintings and sculptures. Although they weren't using linear perspective initially, they were using oil paint to add a lot of depth of color, and it was different than fresco or tempera. So we can create the illusion of reality in a very kind of visceral way. And this was what was important to Renaissance artists and the patrons, because remember, we want to impress the patrons because they're paying for the work. So in the Northern Renaissance, we see artists really making the most of oil paint. They're creating the illusion of light reflecting on metal surfaces and jewels, and the textures appear really realistic, particularly like hair, fur, wool, and wood. So I also mentioned, in the Renaissance in Italy, part of it was a rebirth of, or a revival of interest in the art and culture of ancient Greece and Rome. So in Northern Europe, it's really far from the centers of ancient Greek and Roman culture. So it's not a revival of the way we see the figures being represented in this kind of classical revivalist sense. In the North, that's not the case. So what does the art look like? The first piece we're going to look at is Robert Campan's Merode altarpiece, and it is oil on oak panel, and it is a triptych. So there's 3 panels, and it closes. So this is how it looks open. So what do we see here? First, I hope you notice that there isn't linear perspective. Everything seems a little bit compressed, and there's a lot of foreshortening going on. If you look at this scene of Annunciation here at the foreground, the figures are compressed and almost kind of squeezed into the space. We don't have an exact mathematical linear perspective. So the Annunciation, which is, Mary, Angel Gabriel coming to Mary and telling her she's going to be giving birth to the Messiah. This is where he announces it to her that she's going to conceive Christ. So this is a really, really popular subject matter for art from the entire Middle Ages, and it carries on into the Renaissance. So, whenever you see the angel and the woman, it's probably an Annunciation scene. So the thing I really like about the Merode altarpiece is that it's full of iconography and symbolism. And there's a lot of attention to detail. So maybe that's a Flemish style, this attention to minute details. Like, for instance, this doorway on the left panel leads out to a street scene with a really miniature horse here. So, it's like little details like that, I think, which make painting of the Northern Renaissance so special. So on the left panel, the 2 figures are the donors of the altarpiece. So like I said, oftentimes the patrons want to be included into the artwork also. This is a non-secular piece, so, by placing themselves in the work, they're probably having some kind of, relationship with God and saying, hey, I want to be recognized for my good deeds. I love the little Christ figure that is coming in through the rays in the window from the central Annunciation scene. This is just a detail I'm showing. So a homunculus is a little human or man in Latin, and in medieval and Renaissance painting, it usually represents this little baby Christ going to Mary during the Annunciation. So on the right panel, we have Saint Joseph, who is a carpenter, and he's making, what is he making? He's making mouse traps. So the mouse was a symbol for the devil, who's going to be caught by the trap. So this represents Christ's defeat over the devil. And we have a couple mouse traps he's made. But what I really think is significant is the attention to detail and how he's painted the wood, the texture of the wood. And we have our light source casting a shadow here, and then we get to see everything kind of illuminated over here on what Joseph's working on. I wanted to show you a little map because I had room on the slide. Here's Italy, here's Venice, here's Florence, and then here's Flanders, or current day Netherlands and Belgium. Okay, so this is a really, really, really important piece that I would really like for all of you to take a closer look at. It's Jan van Eyck, Ghent altarpiece, and it's oil and tempera on wood panel from 1432. So Jan van Eyck is kind of the king of the Northern Renaissance. He's the man when it comes to painting in the Northern Renaissance. The best patrons want him. So we have royalty, nobility, people of the church, as well as our newly wealthy independent merchants and bankers, commissioning him to paint. And so this is a Ghent altarpiece. This is how it looks open. So this is a polyptych, which has many panels. This is the closed panel. And it's, again, we see a scene of Mary's Annunciation. And then here's the donor and his wife. He was a very wealthy businessman in Flanders at the time. So let's see if I can click this link here. Let's do this. I want to show you this really amazing website that So this is a website showing a close-up of Jan van Eyck's Ghent altarpiece. So it's basically 100 billion pixels. If you can, we can get really close up to Jan van Eyck's work. So you can see how he's rendered this crown so carefully. Look at the jewels and the flowers. You could really get a sense of texture and color, which is, those are kind of like the key elements that are really emphasized with oil painting: color, texture, and light. So do come to visit this website if you get a chance. You can open up all of the panels and zoom in really far. Like I said, it's 100 billion pixels. So this project was possible by, it was funded by the Getty Center for Art. They were basically doing a restoration of this altarpiece. They took it out of the glass and were restoring it. It hadn't been done for hundreds of years. And then they got a second grant, which allowed them to then digitize all of it. So then we can all look at it really closely, which is, something fun to do. Okay. Okay, so back to Jan van Eyck. This is a piece that's really talked a lot about in art history. Erwin Panofsky's the guy that wrote a book on iconography and iconology, and he talked about this painting a lot. So it's kind of our go-to painting for iconography and art history because it's chock full of symbols. So here we have a portrait of a wealthy Italian merchant, and it's his wife. Some people thought this was a wedding portrait, but it turns out it wasn't. Other scholars say that it's simply a double portrait, and that's it. But some historians debate on that, and they don't agree, and they say, no, I think this had some kind of significance, like it was showing some kind of transaction going down because of the way it's set up. So perhaps it's Giovanni Arnolfini, who's a wealthy Italian merchant, giving some of his property or something over to his wife. I wanted us to take a closer look at this detail of the mirror in the back. So this is really fun. We see Jan van Eyck paint himself into the painting. He says Jan van Eyck was here. That's what this translates to. This mirror, the panels on it, around it, contain scenes from the Passion of the Christ, that whole part of his life. And so it's an extremely, extremely minute detail. And it's said that Jan van Eyck was able to observe things so carefully that his eyes are like a microscope, the way he adds detail in his work. So I really would recommend that you go onto this website here to take a closer detail at the landscape, as well as, the crown of God here. This represents God. Oh, and actually I wanted to mention that. So God is no longer a scary, wrathful, vengeful being. He is a benevolent looking king who's very wealthy. He's decked out in gold and majestic robes. Then we have the Adam and Eve here on the outside panels, which we saw earlier. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the iconography here. We have oranges here, which represent wealth, which might have been what Giovanni Arnolfini was, how he became wealthy, bringing oranges up to Flanders, because that wasn't, you had to have a lot of money in order to buy oranges from far away. This dog represents fidelity, which could be a symbol for the relationship going on here. And you can learn more about it on the Smart History website. There's a good video about it. And finally, I wanted to come to the unicorn tapestries. So this is a series of 7 tapestries, which are quite large, and the information on them has kind of been lost, so it's totally open up to speculation and what the meaning is and what the unicorn represents. In this segment, the unicorn at the fountain, he's actually using his horn here to take out the poison. The snake has poisoned this fountain and this water, so he's putting his horn there it's because it's magic, and he's going to make the fountain pure again. And these are his would-be hunters all around. So basically, they're going to hunt him and kill him, but then in the last panel, we see that he's alive and in captivity. But even they're amazed at what he's doing. So what does the unicorn represent? It's a mythical creature, and we find it in various cultures throughout the world. In medieval tradition, the unicorn usually represents Christ, because there's a fable that he can only be captured by a virgin. So that's a symbol for Mary. I wanted to talk a little bit about the formal aspects of the tapestries. There's a lot of rich detail. The medium includes wool, silver, silk, and gilt. So that's like gilded thread. It's thread that's wrapped in precious metals. The flora and fauna is accurate. These might look like puncture wounds on the unicorn, but he was not actually punctured. They're from the pomegranate trees. They're bursting with juice. So all of the different plant life around has a representation and a meaning. So another thing that the unicorn tapestries were thought to represent is fertility, because the plants that are represented here, such as wild orchid and thistle, were used in the medieval ages to kind of, allow people to procreate if they were trying to have kids and they couldn't. This would allow them to kind of aid them in the process of conceiving. So perhaps the unicorn represents love and marriage and femininity. It was thought to have been designed in France and then made in Brussels. But it is a very kind of epic example of artwork from South Netherlands region. So that concludes our presentations for Learning Unit 2. This was the final one, the third one in the series. Please take notes, revisit, and do the assignments, and we'll see you next time for Learning Unit 3.